Welcome to a new speaker session at Continental. Today, we want to talk about operations in the age of Industry 4.0. As we all know, the idea of Industry 4.0 describes a comprehensive digitization of industrial production. In other words, the linking of industrial production with modern information and communication technology through intelligent and digitally networked systems. Today, we will talk about the change in production which is connected with this transformation and what infrastructures and qualifications are needed to achieve this. My guest today is Franziska Jung. She is Head of Operations of the Power Transmission Group Business Unit. And before we start, an important note. We all were tested negative for COVID in the morning, so all of us are safe. But now a warm welcome to our expert, Franziska Jung. Great to have you here in the studio. Franziska, we already heard a lot about Industry 4.0. Compared to 5 years ago, is there really such a big change in the factory?
I would say a clear yes, definitely. You said already that Industry 4.0 means the comprehensive digitalization of industrial production. And the basis for it are intelligent and digitally networked systems. So, in easy words, we would like to make production as transparent, traceable and predictable as possible. So people, machines, plants, products and the logistics, all of them communicate and collaborate automatically with each other. I always describe it like this, that I would like to have the full transparent product. Yeah? So who are you, where do you come from, and when are you where, and where do you want to go? Yeah? This is how I describe it in simple words. And from my perspective, we really achieved already a lot within Continental. Of course, quite diverse and different from business area to business area, but huge steps in the last years.
Maybe you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, so if I look into the past, you can imagine specifically the rubber-based production in ContiTech, like working step per working step. So I produce one part, half finished, I put it into the bin as a buffer, and then the next process is following. And I do not really know how many parts do I have in which process step and what is the quality status of them. In the last years, we moved more and more to so-called production cells, production lines, where you can imagine the production as a one-piece flow, where you know continuously through all the time how many parts do you have in which quality status, and how was your original production plan, and how good or bad are you in comparison to this production plan. And where we are moving to are really fully integrated systems. So you can imagine this as smart factories, where we have a certain flow simulation, and also data storage, data evaluation. So you know all your data about, you have the full traceability, you have the full transparency, you have fully integrated logistics concepts which are supporting your production, and even future work style in regards to visualization, smart equipment, and of course also smart automation, cobots. Yeah, so robots which are collaborating with human beings without big fences, and really smart automations. And this we see already in some plants, but of course it's still a way to go.
Great news. Continental reached a lot of its goals. Maybe you can tell us more about that, and what are differences to other production sites?
As you know, we are really developing pioneering solutions and services for sustainable and connected mobility for people and their goods. And for that, Industry 4.0 is of course one of the biggest supporters, as we are not just only focusing on innovations of products and services for our customers, as well for ourselves. And for that, we developed so-called model plants. One of them is our plant in Zvolen, Slovakia. They are producing hydraulic brake systems. And they are fully free to develop new ideas in regards to Industry 4.0 and to set standards for whole Continental. Because you also have to know that Industry 4.0 is not a fixed state or stage. It is really a continuous changing development as the world and all the industries are turning more and more quick these days. The same is also valid for Industry 4.0. So constantly we need new ideas, we have new ideas driving things forward. And these model plans are quite important for us out of two reasons. The first reason I said already, we can try out in real life and not just in a laboratory. We can try out in real production if the idea works. And the second important point is the lighthouse function. As you can imagine, in a 150-year-old company as Continental is, we have also quite old facilities and plants in a similar age, which are, of course, historical buildings in a lot of times over multiple layers, up to 7, where we are working with elevators and a lot of manual logistic processes, which is making a proper production flow, so flow of parts as well as logistics processes, incredibly difficult. And you sometimes, with all the investments, time and efforts, you need to implement something like Industry 4.0 or something in the direction of Industry 4.0, you of course sometimes lose hope. And if you then have always these model plans as lighthouses in front of you, you see that it is really possible and you can do it.
Absolutely. So the idea of Industry 4.0 is to have innovations and new solutions all the time. What is one example for such an innovation?
A good example, I think, specifically for the integrated logistic is our so-called AMR. I also brought a picture for us today, and the correct word is autonomous mobile robot. And what is this doing? So this is really truly mobile and flexible transportation in a plant. So this, let's call it vehicle or robot, is really moving autonomously into the warehouse, is getting the parts that are needed on workstation A and delivering the right amount in the right time, without people moving there, going with forklifts or any other manual or human way of transporting things. And this is really a great innovation. And as far as I learned, my colleagues will also present in a separate session this innovation more in deep.
Exactly. The session takes place tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. and in the studio will be Benedikt and Pierre, and they will tell us more about autonomous mobile robots. But back to you. We all had and still have a very special year because of COVID-19. What happened with Continental? Were there any changes in production or strategy?
In regards to strategy, no. I would say we still stick to our strategy that we aligned. But the whole Corona crisis and this very, very outstanding and special year was giving a push in some directions and was making us implementing things even much more quicker than originally planned because we needed them in regards to connectivity and digitalization. Yeah? And one of the examples which are coming to my mind for this are smart glasses that we started to use, which was planned basically much more later.
You already know me now. I want more details. Can you give us more details?
Of course. And again, a picture. So this is what you can see here. This is the so-called smart glasses, or the official wording is remote expert solution, because this is exactly what we can do with this. Before the Corona crisis, you ever had the need that experts for a specific product or process or machine, they needed to travel around the whole world, and when they were not available, you had a problem. But there was no other way than they are really physically going there. And this was, of course, not possible in the crisis. And what have we done first? Of course, we started to send examples and pictures around. And can you help here? And what is the information there? And what should we do? And this takes a lot of time, of course, and it's quite inefficient. This remote expert solution gives you really the chance that a person who has basically not so much clue is able to wear it, go to the respective machine, and is guided by an expert who is placed somewhere else in the world. Yeah, and the expert is seeing miles away the same picture like the person there, and is able to guide the hand of this person to do the repair work, to do the necessary programming, to do the necessary setting, or whatever is the issue. Yeah? Sometimes you also don't know what the issue is, and then the expert has the chance to see it live, without sending any information back and forth and losing time. And this is something we implemented much more quicker than originally planned. And of course, for something like this, you need also a very good VLAN access and speed in each and every corner of our plants. And this rollout, we achieved also much more quicker because we were simply pressured by the need. And this is driving us also much more forward in the direction of Industry 4.0, what we want to finally achieve.
There were also some changes in operations. What can you tell us there?
Of course, besides these effects that I explained, we also learned that we are still not agile enough in our plants, in ramping up and ramping down up to our customer needs and expectations. This was specifically again shown in the crisis. Of course, the solution to this is not so easy, and it is quite complex because there are many aspects in. It starts with the recruiting of our people, where we are sometimes not agile enough. It goes over the training of our people, where we need much more flexible and also multi-skilling concepts, and also the way of training to make it much more standardized and structured, and not just only you work a while with this person at this workplace here, and then in some weeks from now you are able to do this job. Yeah, we need there much more intelligent solutions. It's also employee engagement, communication, collaboration, inventory strategies. All of this was again a topic within the crisis where we have to work on and where we have to focus on.
Let's talk about the workplace of today. What does it look like in times of Industry 4.0? And let's talk as well about the changes and what skills are needed.
Mm-hmm. So if I come back again to ContiTech and the rubber-based production, then in the past, of course, the jobs were physically quite hard, sometimes dirty. You had to have a quite in-deep knowledge of your respective product or process. So which tips or tricks, which handling is important, as rubber is, of course, a quite sensitive good sometimes, and you need specific skills, as the work in the past was, of course, also very manual. Yeah, and you had specifically to know how to touch it, how to turn it, how to screw this and that. And we are moving more and more away from this, of course, also with automation and with Industry 4.0, as we are looking for multi-skilled people who can work flexible in multiple companies, multiple working places. So not so heavily in deep knowledge, but much more broader knowledge, and being able to understand the full value chain as well as quality characteristics. Yeah? So to be really able to judge this process, I made my process in a proper manner, this is an okay product. And of course also the ability to work with computers, with IT in general, yeah, not to being afraid to collaborate with a cobot or even programming a robot. This kind of mindset and skills we are looking for these days, fully different than in the past.
Franziska, you are the only woman working at Continental as head of operations of a business unit. There are more men working in this area. How do you see that?
Me personally, I love a lot what I'm doing. And for me, it was always important that I can create something. And in operations, I have the feeling I turn a screw in the morning, and in the evening, I hold the product and the results in my hands. And I think this desire for tangible, visible goods, products, results, it's much more important than the gender question. So it's not so important if you are a man or a woman. This is always my credo, if this is what is driving you and what you are looking for. Nevertheless, you are right. In the operations area, we are just a few women, but I can really tell you from my own experience that this is on the way to change. Because when I look into the plants, my 12 plants, which I'm responsible for, 3 of them are headed by women. So we have 3 women there as plant managers. And also my central operations team, almost half of them are already women. So we see this change. And I answer this always for myself, why it is so traditional a man resort. I think it's specifically when you look into this old-fashioned, dirty, physically hard production I was speaking about, that of course this was a clear area for men. But with all the changes I described towards automation, better ergonomics, cleaner working places, Industry 4.0, this is changing also more and more to a workplace for women. And I personally think that this diversity on the human side is so important that we are really able to achieve this agility we are looking for and finding the proper solutions for the complex problems that, for example, the Corona crisis delivered a lot to us.
Franziska, we're already at the end. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for a great insight regarding Industry 4.0, and thanks for being here in the studio.
I thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed the session. Continental would be pleased to get in touch with you on this topic. Simply use our general contact address in our HMI 2021 Continental dashboard. Till then, be safe and have a great day.